Unspoken Issues.
All right, let's get into this thing. You threw out Jack Kirby's Fourth World number 20 really quickly. This wasn't on the spreadsheet in any way, right? Before you said, hey, let's do this?
No, it turns out, like we were talking about before we started the show, I've got a little extra time off. Right now, I'm going through a disability thing, and so I had a little extra time off. I was like, hey, there's some time. Let's get a couple extra shows in here, especially some stuff we can do quick. Jack Kirby's Fourth World number 20, which almost everything in it's done by Byrne. It's a single issue. I figured it's fun. It's really, really good. It retells some stuff from the 70s for the 90s, and I figured, hey, if we had the free time, get two of my best friends together over the holiday season and mercilessly make fun of them for the things they don't know, but also, no, for real, spend some time with you guys on what I feel is like a very, very fun and uplifting story. It's not literally a holiday story, but it certainly embodies the spirit of things this time of year to an extent. And it's also just, like you said, I love Jack Kirby. I love the Fourth World. I think it's the best stuff he ever did. I think that this is an excellent retell. This is basically a retelling of Forever People number 1. It goes a little differently, though. There's a little of one of the Jimmy Olsen's mixed in there, 149 maybe. I can't remember. And then tiniest bit of New Gods number 1, but from back in the 70s. And so I just love this stuff. I thought it would be easy. I thought it would be fun, and figured we have the time to do it. So here we are. It turns out y'all don't hate me as much as I thought y'all did. Here we are. Going to talk a little Jack Kirby's Fourth World and Superman. Superman plays a very prominent role here, just like he did in the original Forever People number 1. So when we get to that, I'll tell you all whatever you want to know about Jack Kirby and the Fourth World that I know.
Okay.
And again, this is something that the legacy's changed a lot since Jack left DC Comics and certainly since he's passed away. But the core of it kind of remains the same. And most of if you ask me something, if something later contradicts it, if somebody's listening, they're like, hey, well, and JMD Matisse's Forever People miniseries, I mostly go off what Kirby did. So if anything contradicts later, it's because I'm a Kirby first guy.
Oh, yeah, I remember seeing you post some stuff back when it wasn't too long ago, you were reading through a lot of the Kirby Forever People stuff.
I did. About a month ago, I read Forever People, the complete run. I have the box set, which actually what's funny is I have Jack Kirby's Fourth World like 4 different ways.
Oh, yeah.
I have this omnibus set that's all black that releases in the order they came. Mm-hmm. Then I have one that's really big and thick. That's the order that you should read them. Then I have a box set. This is Mr. Miracle. This is New Gods. This is Forever People. This is Jimmy Olsen. Then I have 2 Ultimate editions, which are like super giant. And look at the art. And you just get blown away by the grandiosity of the guy who basically invented everything that is cool now.
Darry, what do you think?
I love the Fourth World. I love Kirby. I have never read this series. It actually came out in the 90s. Dean already mentioned, but this is a follow-up / retelling of a lot of the original stories. Byrne is a huge Kirby fan. So this is the first issue of this series I've ever read. But like Dean, I've read every issue of the Fourth World multiple times. The man was ahead of his time back then when he was doing that stuff. It's the first crossover of note. It's 4 titles that are telling both 4 separate stories and 1 large story. And again, by the time Kirby was doing that, he'd already invented the Marvel Universe. He had reinvented 100 characters at DC. He just, like, this wasn't, if this was the only thing he had ever done, we'd be singing his praises. This is like the 10th thing he did in his career, and he wasn't done. When he got fired off this, he created the Demon. He created Commandy. He went back to Marvel. Yeah,
Devil Dinosaur, the Miracle Man stuff. His Captain America run was lambasted for a long time, but now in the last 10 years, people are like, actually, this is pretty good stuff. We just didn't like it because it was so different from everything else that was going on. The Eternals, he wasn't close to done. And like for me, the Eternals are a throwaway. I'm not a big Eternals fan. Because personally, I'm like, what did the Eternals do that he didn't do much better in New Gods? Get back to what you were talking about. Yeah, Kirby didn't invent superhero comics necessarily, but he certainly was one of the first people driving the car. And then he invents the romance. Him and Joe Simon invent romance comics. They do all kinds of stuff, like you said, create the Marvel Universe. And now here we are with New Gods, which won't be the last thing he does.
Well, first of all, just to go back to something you said about the Eternals, I will say there's one thing that I liked about the Eternals when I read it the first time, and I continue to like it. Unlike his Thor run and his Tales of Asgard and the New Gods and even some of the Captain Victory stuff, the Eternals is very focused on the unknowability of God. Yeah. The Eternals is all about Jack Kirby was born, I'm sure I'm pronouncing this wrong, but Jacob Kurtzberg. So he was raised Jewish, and that was part of his identity throughout his entire life. with Galactus and later with the Celestials, he was constantly wrestling with this. What is God, right? What is this unknowable, supremely powerful force? And how does it interact on people who have self-awareness? And I always like that about the Eternals because he never gives you an answer. Granted, the book was canceled, but he was on it for a year and a half, and he could have given you an answer, and he refused to, which is why to this day the Celestials are always cited as one of those great Marvel concepts because they have no face. They give you nothing. They are unknowable. They show up. They do something, and you can only react. And I always thought
they're vaguely defined by what they do, sort of like the endless or other mythological concepts.
Yeah.
One of them's like I forget. One of them's the judge.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of them's the doer. One of them's the undoer. Whatever. Yeah. I will say this though. I didn't necessarily like reading Eternals. I should give it another chance, but I've never stopped liking to look at Eternal. I looked at these pages, they are crazy great.
Yeah.
Crazy great.
Yeah.
And
something interesting about the Fourth World too, going back to the Eternals, but Kirby never let a good idea lie. So one of the reasons he kept going back to Captain America is he just liked the character. He co-creates him in the 40s. He comes back to him in the 60s. He pushes Stan. He pushes Martin Goodman. He says, put this guy in the Avengers. Put him in there. This is a good concept. I want to draw him. And it's arguable most of the best stories were in the 60s when they brought him back. Yeah. And then he comes back again. He brings him in the mid to late 70s. The bicentennial stories, they're great. And to Dean's point, they're more relevant today than they were when they came out. They're all about subversion and the Falcon and the craziness of normal people when they get into large groups. It's great stuff, especially for
militia ideology.
Yeah. Oh, it's cool.
They're trying to overthrow America to make it Britain again. But you could assign all of the stuff they say, you could assign to various hardcore right-wing militia movements. It's not dissimilar.
Yeah. My point is that when Kirby created something new, he still tied it back to everything that came before. And Fourth World is a really good example of that because one of the Fourth World was 4 titles, and one of them was Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, and he makes a point of bringing back characters he created for National Comics, DC's predecessor, back in the 40s, the Newsboy Legion. So the Guardian. Right, and the Guardian, right.
Sorry, I'm not trying to be pedantic.
No. But it's funny because I've read the original Newsboy Legion, so I just think of the Guardian as like their adult friend. But you're right. Most people would say Guardian is the property and Newsboy Legion is secondary. But Kirby really went out. It doesn't always
work that way, though.
No, of course not. But Kirby really went out of his way to make a cohesive universe. Even the Fourth World, one of the reasons other writers try to tie it into the DC universe is he wasn't afraid to do that himself. He wrote some great Superman stories, regardless of the fact that they redrew all the faces. But yeah, I could talk about Jack Kirby, the Fourth World, all day. I wouldn't stop talking. I wouldn't even stop to take a breath. So
a lot of history involved in this title. My goodness, you guys definitely had, at least talking to you and guys in the past and now, I realize that there's just so much here that came before. This whole series that happened, by the way, we're getting into issue 20, which hit shelves in August of 98. Was it the whole series like that, just retelling of previous stories?
No, I believe there was a New God series that predates this, and I think at the end of that New God series, the status quo was that New Genesis and Apocalypse have been combined again, because at one point New Genesis and Apocalypse were like one planet, and so they've been combined. So that's why they changed the title from New God, because John Byrne was doing the New Gods title at that time too. And they changed the title to Jack Kirby's Fourth World. And I used to have a promo poster of it, but it was like, can they live together? Because they're diametrical opposites. They're now going to be forced to coexist. And I don't think most of it was retelling. Some of it was, some of it couldn't help but be, but most of it was new stories under that status quo. A lot of it dealt with Tachyon was a new god. That's a funny thing to say, but he was a new god that they were trying to make prominent at that point. And later this is the ultimate issue of the series. This will be it for Jack Kirby's Fourth World. The stuff will continue with Walt Simonson's Orion a couple years later.
Yeah, I actually had that in my notes here. Walt Simonson is ready to take over with Orion, I think.
And he did some backup stories for this series, too.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah, which I have read, but I don't remember a lot. I think this is by far the best issue of the series. John Byrne's a weird guy who gets on to anybody who changes anything, but he just changes whatever he feels like.
Yeah.
And somehow he's like, you don't get what Jack Kirby was trying to do. You don't get what Steve Ditko was trying to do. You're getting away from the original idea. In the meantime, I'll do Spider-Man Chapter 1.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, I'll put the New Gods together, which is something that I don't think was ever going to happen. That's not really, they're diametrically opposed. That's the interest of stuff. I get why you would put them together. There's interesting stories to be told there. But if you're going back to the heart of the New Gods in the Fourth World, at no point should New Genesis and Apocalypse ever combine again. They cannot be together. It's like a magnet. North and North won't. You cannot push them together.
Yeah. So
I used to think I was really strong because I could push refrigerator magnets together. Like they wouldn't want to go, and I'd push them down, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm stronger than the universe."
I did it.
I wasn't.
On the shelf at this time, just to kind of throw out there for DC Comics in 1998, August of 1998 specifically, one of the big stories that kind of jumped off to me when I was looking at Mike's Amazing World of Comics was The Nail #3 was out on the shelf, which is a good tale. Issue #3 of a 4-issue series written by David Michelinie called Legion Science Police. I don't know if any of you guys are Legion fans here, but David Michelinie hopped onto that.
I'm aware of that miniseries. I've always wanted to take a look at it. I've never.
Okay.
It sounds kind of delightfully boring. What do these cops do?
Right. Well, yeah.
What do they do? There's no money in the future. Everything should be free. What do they do?
Aquaman annual, Batman annual, Flash annual, Green Lantern annual, JLA annual, Martin Manhunter. Martin Lawrence as Martian Manhunter.
Right. That's his middle name.
Martian Manhunter annual, Superman annual, and Wonder Woman annual all had an event going on right now. Can any of you guys guess what it was in 1998?
Legends of the Dead Earth.
Close.
Dead Heroes.
Dead has something to do with it. I've never read it, but apparently there was an event going on called Ghosts.
Okay.
Yep,
yeah.
Exactly.
I think Ape is the last one. JL Ape is 99. Pulp Heroes was 97. 96 was Legends of the Dead Earth.
Okay.
95 was Year One, and 94 was Elseworlds. Something like that.
Yeah, sounds right.
But DC, from Bloodlines, actually the whole decade, in 2001, it was Armageddon 2001. 92, it's Eclipso, and then it's Bloodlines. So they kind of did that with their annuals the whole decade. I liked it.
Let's talk real quick about who the new, these guys are, the Forever People.
The Forever People.
All right. Now, you're not wrong. The Forever People are new gods, but not all new gods are Forever people.
New gods.
They are their own thing, the Forever People. They're cosmic space hippies.
Yeah. So the Forever People have two different origins. One is the one in the continuity, which is the idea that they're exactly what Dean said. They're teenagers, they're hippies, and they've been sent to Earth. They've been sent to explore. They have the super cycle, and they go around and they do things. But the real origin for the characters and why one of the reasons I think that they didn't land the way the rest of the characters do, because you almost never see the Forever People. They weren't in Superman the Animated Series. They're not usually included in any of the adaptations, but they're great characters nonetheless. Is at this point, King Kirby was living on the West Coast. So he has 4 kids. He's looking outside his window. He's seeing young people, and he's always been very modern, right? When he was drawing Marvel books, he'd look at modern fashions. He was not one of these guys who said, no, things should stay stagnant.
That's why the Silver Surfer surfs, because surfing was a big fad at the time. And he's like, if the kids are surfing, maybe they'll pick this up.
Yeah, and he was the first to admit when an idea didn't work, but when it worked, he pursued it. Silver Surfer's still around today, pretty much unchanged.
He knew without, what's the word I'm looking for? Just intrinsically that you're not going to attract younger audiences without giving younger audiences things they're into without judgment. You look at him, he's doing Silver Surfer at the same time. DC's trying to do Teen Titans, and that's a viewpoint of how older people didn't like young people. Now, they were doing Doom Patrol, which worked at the same time, but Kirby got that, and that's what these Forever People are.
But Doom Patrol is a Kirby book. What's his name? Bruno, I forget the gentleman's name, and I apologize.
Premiani?
Thank you very much. He went on the record as saying Doom Patrol was my attempt to do Kirby and Lee's Fantastic
Four. For sure.
He said that. He said that numerous times.
And Arno Drake was, trying to catch, the writer. He was like, I'm trying to catch some of this energy, but it becomes its own thing. And that was one of the only books they had that could speak to young people the way Kirby could. And that was by no means a mainstream DC book. No. But Kirby could speak to young people in Fantastic Four. And Kirby could do it in Thor of all places. And now he's doing it here with Forever People, like you were saying. I cut you off. I'm very rude. These are the hippies he's seeing. It's the motorcycle gangs who are driving up and down his canyon, making loud noises. This is what he sees is happening in California around him.
But the other interesting thing about the Forever People, and everything I'm about to say is complete hearsay, but they're the Star Wars characters. The Fourth World came out before Star Wars. George Lucas owned a comic book store. I've never met the man, but he had to have been influenced by the Fourth World. And when you get down to the Forever People, it's it's almost cartoonish. You have Beautiful Dreamer. You could draw a parallel with Leia. You could draw a parallel with the general concept of the Force. Big Bear is very similar to Chewie. You have Seraphim and Mark Moonrider. And if you take different things from each, you get Luke Skywalker and Han Solo. They constantly talk about the Source, which is similar to the Force. Darkseid. I'm not saying that Lord Vader was based on him, but come on. And again, I love Star Wars. I'm not complaining. Star Wars stole from a bunch of different things, and I'm glad this was one of them. But you look at the Forever People and you're like, wait a second, you guys look kind of familiar, but then you realize they came out before A New Hope. So again.
Yeah, they should have cut Jack a check, and I think Jack felt that way at the time.
Everyone should have cut Jack a check. I say that as someone who, when Disney was like, wait, this is going to the Supreme Court, I was almost like, let it go. And then they cut the
They cut him a check, and that's fine.
They cut him a nice big check.
His descendants, I would probably give them some money, as wild as that sounds. I'm like, listen, this is for what your grandpa, great uncle, dad, or whoever did for me. Here's $200.
Everyone.
You know, I'm sure I got at least this out of it that should have gotten to you that didn't. So y'all enjoy this. Y'all go have a good dinner.
My favorite thing in the world is this year I went to Comic-Con for the first time in a while, and they had a big display of the Devil Dinosaur and Moon Girl cartoon that was coming out. And it's a great cartoon. Everyone should watch it. But I had to keep explaining to people this was based on a throwaway Kirby concept back in the 70s. Again, something he just came up with. He drew for however many issues he could get out until it was canceled. And then it was brought back years later. And now it's very successful in a different way. But it's just, again, he just kept making things up until he died. He was making new stuff up after he had retired, after he had switched industry. He was still making stuff up. It's just like
he couldn't make any money, or do we?
That's the thing. He was
I will
the worst
say this:
businessman.
it is somewhat of a misnomer that Jack Kirby was poor. If you look at what he was making, he made six figures during the '60s, which is a really, for inflation, that's a great living. Don't get me wrong, but he should have been making millions. Literally, even at that time, they're taking his drawings,
but also
they're putting him into cartoons. They're taking his ideas. They're putting him in. They're showing his drawings everywhere. He's having to come in and redo all the covers and all this stuff. And he's making up everything that's going on in his books. I hate to tell you Stan Lee folks that, but that's what happened. Stan Lee never made up anything before he met Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko, and he never made up anything after. And that's the proof of the pudding to me. Where's all these great ideas? Where is everything that he did before and after? I can tell you all of Kirby's great ideas before and after. Ditko did stuff that affected things before and after, but not him. So he was making all this stuff. He's creating the Marvel Universe and having to beg to get $3 more a page. It's a joke. And everybody, like you said, should be cutting the Kirby family a check.
You're right. He was well compensated, especially in an industry where no one was really...
he worked like 15 hours a day for that.
But that's the thing.
He worked. Had his mind as well. And he had no security. He was a freelancer. He didn't get any insurance. He didn't have a real contract. He didn't have any of that stuff.
No, he had no pension, no guarantees.
Listen, I make good money now, but I have to work 55, 60 hours a week to get it. And that means time away from my family and loved ones. Sometimes I'd rather have that, but you have to make this choice. He made that choice. I understand that, but he should have made that choice. He should have been editing Marvel Comics by 68, or at least co-editing, art director or something, and just designing characters, which is what he really wanted to do. The idea with the New Gods is that he'd only do it for 6 months, and then other people come into the books, and he would just oversee them. And he never got to do that. He should have, because that's where he should have just put him in a room for 10 hours a day and be like, Jack, whatever comes out, bring it out, and we'll get to work on it. We'll flesh it out as much as you want and come on out. So anyhow, that's my Jack Kirby rant. I'm very pro Kirby, and I think if you're not pro Kirby, you're self-delusional. You're benefiting from the existing paradigm. That's
transitioning into the specific characters here in this book. Can you kind of give me an idea of who we have that make up the Forever?
No, like he was saying, they compare very favorably to the Star Wars Dungeons and Dragons group. They're cosmic space hippies. Like Mark Moonrider is the leader. He sort of just does stuff.
Okay, now Mark Moonrider, can you describe him? As far as I didn't catch too many names. I saw one guy had a cowboy hat. Is that who we're talking about?
No, that's Seraphim.
Okay, all right.
Mark Moonrider has a headgear.
Gotcha. All right.
Yeah, you know how every character in the 90s, especially at Image, they had the head sock? Yep. That's where this starts. Kirby decided that teenagers were just about to start adapting this weird head sock thing that Gambit and every one of the Image characters would wear. You see it on Mark Moonrider here, and that's where Liefeld and the others claim they got it from. So
And then we have Viking the Black, who honestly, the king swung and missed at this one. Calling someone the Black who is a black person is not a good look. But the fact that a black guy is in the book is a good thing. There weren't a lot of black guys in any books at this point.
Actually, I looked this up once. He predates Jon Stewart. Viking the Black might be DC's first silver bronze age black superhero.
I think Mal Duncan is a little
Mal, excuse me. Yeah, but he wasn't a superhero yet. He was still just
he was
Mal
still
Duncan.
Just a guy.
He hadn't yet become Boy Blue or whatever his nonsense.
Right. Yeah. Where he gets the horn or whatever.
So yeah, I'm not saying that Viking the Black is the world's greatest name, but again, Kirby was like, I want to have a black character in here.
Right.
He also introduces their first Asian superhero. He's not in the issue we read today, but Sonny Sumo. He was like, the black racer. And Kirby was all about like, I'm from New York. I want characters that reflect what I see. I want different ethnicities. Right. Not everyone's got to be white, especially if they're from freaking space. So
right. I think that's just a bad name. I don't think he meant anything by it. Sure. But it's not a good look at it. But mostly what Viking does is be really smart.
Yeah.
I forget what his exact power is, but he's the one who tunes in with Mother Box the best.
Yeah, he's like a computer programmer. He's like the god in the machine because his Mother Box is bigger. Yeah.
He's very in tune with both things scientific and things cosmic, which always collide in a Kirby title. But the hippy-dippy stuff, he gets that in a way that most techno people don't. Yeah. And then you have Big Bear, who's really, really big. He can control his atoms. And mostly what that means is he makes them very strong so he can hit people really hard.
Really hard.
Beautiful dreamer. She has ignition ability. She has illusion ability. She's the group's soul to an extent. And Seraphan's the scamp. He has the hat, and on his hat he has cosmic cartridges, which can do whatever he needs them to do at pretty much any given time. That's definitely one of Kirby's greatest MacGuffins. He'll just pull one out and he'll be like, yeah, I needed a glue. They needed glue to stick to the ceiling. My cosmic cartridge will do it. But then two pages later, he needs to blow something up, and a cosmic cartridge does it. I would imagine, and I don't know what Kirby knew or didn't know, but I wonder if this is the Schrodinger's box. All of these cartridges aren't anything until Seraphan decides there's something. I don't know if he would describe it that way, but that's how it comes across very much so to me. They ride the Super Cycle, which is a big old trooped up 4x4 beast of a vehicle that it's really a shame that we've never gotten in toy format at this point. Like I would pay $500 for a Kickstarter direct to consumer. It's got to come with all the Forever people.
Yeah, you need those guys.
But I would pay $500-600 for one that would come with all of them. And what it can go through dimensions, it can open boom tubes, it can make itself intangible as we see. And those are the Forever people. What else you want to know about them, Jesse?
Tell me about Mother Box again. Let me just say real quick. I have an idea of what Mother Box is. It sounds like it's a very advanced computer. Recently, I want to say recently, within the last 6 months, maybe to a year, when Armstrong and Evan and myself covered
You're going to say Archer for a second.
Yeah, Archer and Armstrong. We got together.
I was like, what?
We covered the Superman Doomsday rematch. And Mother Box ended up being a big part of Superman's costume at that point. So,
right.
Again, can you kind of give the listeners an idea of what Mother Box is?
And when we did Panic in the Sky, the Forever people were in that, and they used the Mother Box,
That's
if you recall,
right. That's
to become
right.
the Infinity Man, which is the other person that we haven't talked about yet.
Yep.
But Mother Box is essentially a living computer that you can put it on, and it will tune itself to you. It'll start making you feel a lot, make you start feeling a lot better. It can heal you. It can give you insight into things, both factual and also just that are more feeling and instinct based. It is one of the greatest inventions that I think I've ever heard of. I've never described a Mother Box to someone who didn't want one afterwards.
Right, dude.
Because they make you feel good. They make you feel good about yourself. They build up your self-esteem. And it's a supercomputer who also can answer any question you have. And also can do some offensive stuff too, like shoot a laser and this kind of thing. So unless there's something I'm missing on Mother Boxes, that's pretty much it. Invented on New Genesis by, I think, who invented the Mother Box?
Hyman.
That's right. So it wasn't invented on New Genesis. It was invented on Apocalypse then.
Yeah. The thing about the Mother Box that I always liked was when Kirby created the Fourth World with the gods, right? Whether they're from Apocalypse or New Genesis, or they're these teenagers, they're gods. They're the same types of characters he was writing in Thor. Is he wanted to do this thing where he said, well, instead of magic hammers and instead of all the crap that the Asgardians and the Olympians and everyone else used, Like, what are these new gods going to have? Well, computers seem to be a big thing, right? So they're going to have the computers of the gods, and Dean described it perfectly. It's not just, again, he draws these things in the 70s. Some of them look like smartphones. They just do. I'm not saying he was a time traveler. I'm saying he just knew one day we're going to have a thing that can tell you all this nonsense is going to fit in your pocket. He also has big ones that can do more complicated things. But the whole idea is that they are the tools of the gods, and they are computers, but they're also smart. And they make decisions for them, and they work with them. And it's a lot of this plot shorthand. Dean mentioned the cartridges. It's the same thing. He's going to have them fight the god of evil. Well, he can't slow the plot down to explain things. It's like they've got a god weapon, and it allows them to get where they need to go. They have the boom tube. They have everything else. The Fourth World was so packed with these giant, massive, big ideas that DC is still processing today. He didn't want to have to slow down to get the characters somewhere. He gave them all the tools and weapons they needed. Just like how back in the day Mjolnir could cut across galaxies if
and time.
Yeah, whatever the story called.
Zarko the Tomorrow Man.
Yeah, exactly.
You ever see that guy, Jesse? Zarko the Tomorrow Man?
I don't think I have.
His time machine is a coffin.
What?
If you look him up, man, his time machine was a coffin. But a great name, and he wants to be a cool character. But yeah, exactly. You're exactly. I didn't mean to cut you off too bad, Darry.
No. It's just it's easy for us to say, oh, they're living computers because we live in a time where we have computers and everyone's constantly talking about artificial intelligence. But no, this was the early 70s, and he looked at it and he said, well, what are the gods of today? What are their tools going to be? They're going to be computers that help them do everything. They do things we don't even know how to describe. So
at this point, I want to say ARPANET, which is the ultimate predecessor to the internet, is only like 2 years old.
It's got to be really nice.
I mean, also, I glossed over earlier, you're asking about these guys, the things they do. They are gods, as Darry said, so they all possess a certain amount of super strength and super durability.
Let's talk about Infinity Man then.
Yeah, so Infinity Man, Kirby always liked the character of Shazam. So that was a character he didn't create, but he was a big fan of him back in the day.
Got to do a few great stories, too. If you can find Kirby and Simon's Captain Marvel, it's dope.
Couldn't agree more. But there's a lot of that influence throughout Kirby's work where you have a kid or someone who's small and something happens to them and they turn bigger, right? Like that's basically the origins of both Captain America and Thor. And the Infinity Man is another great example where some or all of the Forever People, when they say their magic word, Taru, it's just the sci-fi super god equivalent of Shazam, then they turn into this Captain Planet type guy, the Infinity Man. And he's insanely powerful, way more than any of the normal gods, and he comes in for special occasions. But also, he is Transformers. They call it the Gestalt, right? He is the combination of them. He isn't just one or the other. They got to be in the right mind. They got to be on the same page. They got to be on the same wavelength. They got to be understanding things. And when they work together, it's this metaphor. When you work together, you can overcome the god of evil or devil lance or whatever nonsense you're fighting. But again, Infinity Man's one of those concepts outside of John Byrne doing this fanfic of it. He didn't show up all that much because Kirby never really got to flesh him out. In the Eternals, he would bring back a similar concept, the Unimind.
The Unimind, yeah.
Yeah. And in that, it was the same concept, but it was writ large over an entire species. The more Eternals who get together, who are on the same wavelength, they can create something that can even speak to a Celestial. So it was definitely a concept that Kirby kept playing with. What happens if we all figure out how to work together immediately, and not just talking through it. We all know we want one thing and we're going to work it out. So Infinity Man is really interesting. Dean told me something I didn't know before I read this, though, that John Byrne seems to be hinting at the idea that the Infinity Man is his own person and that he's actually Darkseid's brother, which I did not know.
I think Kirby was hinting at that too, because while the Infinity Man is sort of the Gestalt of the Forever People, they actually trade places with him. They go to this other faraway planet.
Okay.
And at the end of the original Forever People run, it ends with them on the planet, and Infinity Man is seemingly killed. Later on, they rectified that. So while he is a Gestalt, he does represent them working together. There's also this put yourself aside, I think, element to that that is embodied physically in the Forever People going to whatever planet they're on at that point when they switch places. And in the Forever People miniseries that JMD Matisse did, which I don't really care for, to be honest. I said that very hatefully on purpose. It's fun, to be honest. It's not really a big deal. But it talks about them. They go there and live in Big Bear because they never come back because Infinity Man gets killed at the end of the original run. And so Big Bear and Beautiful Dreamer get married and all this stuff happens. And it doesn't capture cosmic space hippie for me the way even this did or what have you. I'm sure it's perfectly fine, but it doesn't resonate for me. But yeah, they stay their separate people even while the Infinity Man shows up. And yeah, from what I understand, he was going to be revealed as Darkseid's brother at some point.
Well, let's go ahead. We'll get into the story. I don't think there's any other questions that I have here.
You don't want us to tell you about Superman?
Go ahead. Somebody tell me about Superman.
All right,
well, this is the John Byrne Superman. Yeah. So
the Man of Tomorrow.
Probably be a good idea to kind of frame where we're at in Superman's history.
At this point, and there's a blurb about it. It takes place before, I think, the last issue of the Man of Steel miniseries. And that's where he learns about Krypton and stuff. In the original telling, he knew where he was from. He just felt out of place on Earth.
Okay.
He was just like, it was odd to see somebody like Kirby, who's normally known for that big bombastic look, to go so personal and ground level, where he was just like, Superman's just like, I don't belong here. I want to be in a place where people are like me.
It was interesting. I was very surprised that John Byrne chose this story, because this was always one of my favorites from the Fourth World. The Fourth World, when it was going on originally in the 70s, Superman was a fundamental part of that. He was in the Jimmy Olsen book. He fought Darkseid. He fought Intergang. He continues to fight Intergang to this day. This is a great story because it shows what Kirby brought to existing characters. He never worked on Superman when he was at National in the 30s and 40s. He didn't work in that office. It wasn't something that happened. I really do believe that someone at DC in the 70s, to Dean's point, was we should let Kirby take over Superman, because this is the biggest name in the business, and this is the biggest property that this business has ever had. This seems like it would be a marriage made in heaven. And this is the one story where you see what might have happened if he had been given free reign. Because the very first thing he does when he gets a hold of Superman is he finds a way to make everything about him normal, and to give you a story about what does Superman really worry about when he doesn't have to worry about saving everyone on the planet. Kirby does that in one story. Guys have written Superman for 10 years, and they never get stories that are that intimate. He does it on his first issue. So
it's also a big character leap, too, because think about the 60s and 50s of Superman. Most of it's, Lois Lane trying to look under his cape, right? It's just figure out a secret identity, and here's a super monkey and all this. It's such a wild shift. But you're right. I don't know that they ever get there during the entire decade until this point.
It's great because Kirby, what I was saying before, is he always looked back. He's like, I know this character. What would I do with him? Well, the first thing I would do is take him to a place where he's not super and sit him down and figure out, what makes him so interesting. That's why Supertown is great, because it's this place of the gods. He goes to Asgard. He goes somewhere else. He goes to this place, and someone sits him down and says, well, who are you if you're not saving people? And he goes, I don't know. And he goes, well, if you figure it out, let me know. But in the meantime, unfortunately, our problems are now your problems. And I love this because I love Superman being like, oh, wait, I might want to stay here. I might not, to Dean's point, I might not want to be an outsider anymore. Yeah, and this continuity doesn't know he's from Krypton. But again, I'm not a big John Byrne fan, so the whole Man of Steel thing, I don't.
Whoa!
I know.
Don't you like John Byrne?
I know.
It's fine. I'm not the biggest John Byrne fan either. So
I should say I'm a huge X-Men fan, and I'm not in any way saying that John Byrne is a bad storyteller or a bad writer or a bad whatever, but when he's on Superman, my eyes glaze over. So anyway, there was
like when you think about what he did with Superman, and again, this is a guy who's every time you talk to him, he's like, nobody should change anything. He changed everything. Paul and Pa Kent are still alive. There's no Superboy. There's no Supergirl. There's no Krypto. He was never in the Legion of Superheroes as a kid. All this stuff that he just changed. And again, I find it weird, and I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I think bringing Ma and Pa Kent back actually made for a lot of great stories going forward, particularly when you get the Simonson, Stern, Jurgens, Breeding, Kessel team of the 90s, Grummett and Bogdanov. I can never say that guy's name, but he's there. And he's doing Superman. And I don't know. I feel like that was a pretty good thing to bring back. But it's just weird that when you make these quantum changes to characters, but then you complain whenever anybody else doesn't, say they don't get it. It's just weird. That's so arbitrary to think that somehow you're the only one who could possibly ever make a good change. That's weird.
Right.
Who's that good? Right. Like Highfather, maybe?
Yeah, that's
maybe
a fair question.
Well, let's get into this here. Let's get into the issue. I'll do a little synopsis, then we'll talk about any specifics that you guys like to get into. So here we go. It is Tales of the New Gods. The Gods Themselves is the title of this story. And, of course, this is Jack Kirby's Fourth World, number 20. Written, artist, letterer, John Byrne. Colored by Noel Giddings.
He got the lettering in. How about that? It's weird. It's one of the few books I ever noticed the lettering. Right. And it's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. In the bustling streets of Metropolis, the city's guardian Superman embarks on his routine as the mild-mannered reporter Clark Kent. As he heads to the Daily Planet, his path crosses with the enthusiastic Jimmy Olsen, who eagerly presents photographs capturing a strange group of people known as the Forever People, from a realm called Supertown. Among these snapshots is an intriguing image of a boom tube revealing a distant cityscape that's caught Clark's attention. Enthralled, Clark delves deeper into the story. Jimmy recounts a harrowing incident involving his friends narrowly escaping danger thanks to the timely intervention of the Forever People. They were the ones that kind of almost caused the accident, but luckily nothing happened. Fueled by curiosity, Superman takes to the skies, unaware of the lurking dangers as members of Intergang, surveilling the skies in a chopper, alert their malevolent master. Is Darkseid the master of Intergang? Am I right in saying that?
Ultimately, yes.
Okay.
Morgan Edge is the leader on Earth, or at least he was for a long time, but ultimately Darkseid's running that show.
Okay, got it. So they alert Darkseid of Superman's presence. Soon, Superman locates the Forever People, only to be ambushed by the Intergang helicopter. Undeterred, the Man of Steel swiftly handles the attackers by throwing a tree into the helicopter before he's halted by Big Bear, a member of the Forever People. They seek their missing friend, Beautiful Dreamer, and believe Intergang holds vital information. The plot thickens as Superman detects a toxic gas threat. Actually, he detects what looked to be some type of metal object sticking out in these bushes, and then the gas gets released. But luckily, Superman and his super speed swiftly neutralize the danger. However, their respite is short-lived as Darkseid's Graviguards, his minions, launch an assault, and in a dire moment, the Forever People summon Infinity Man, a powerful cosmic entity, to aid in the battle. The tides turn as Infinity Man swiftly deals with the Graviguards, demanding Darkseid's release of Beautiful Dreamer. Darkseid appears, revealing his failed attempts to decipher the elusive anti-life equation using Dreamer's mind. Releasing her, but trapping her on a device rigged with radion bombs, Darkseid teleports out of there. Superman leaps into action, evacuating Dreamer and Infinity Man as the bombs explode, but stays ahead of the blast with sheer speed, narrowly averting disaster. Amidst the chaos, Infinity Man rejoices as Beautiful Dreamer is safe, then screams, "Tauru!" to bring back the Forever People. Grateful, the Forever People offer their aid to Superman, who seeks answers about his mysterious origins, and he believes those answers may lay in Supertown. They open a boom tube, giving Superman a passage to New Genesis, and Superman ventures through, marveling at Supertown, a realm teeming with superpowered beings. His quest for answers leads him to Highfather, who redirects him back to Earth, affirming that his destiny and answers lie there. Meanwhile, Highfather confides in Orion about Darkseid's presence on Earth, envisioning Superman as a crucial ally in the impending conflict. Orion, bearing the weight of this prophecy, sets course for Apocalypse, preparing for the inevitable clash that may herald the dawn of the Fifth World.
Yep.
All right.
That's what the prophecy was. First to Apocalypse, then to Earth, then to war.
Then to war.
Yep.
So there we go.
Couldn't be avoided.
Apparently not. That was the final issue of Jack Kirby's Fourth World. So, Darry, let's start with you, buddy. What do you think of the issue? What are your thoughts, man?
I really, really enjoyed it. It adapts some of the great stuff from Kirby's original and chooses some of the key beats, right? There's Mr. Miracle's not here, Orion's not here. They don't end the conflict. It's a lot of setup, which is what the Fourth World was. It was always about the next chapter, the next cliffhanger. You know the battle with Darkseid is coming, but we don't necessarily get to it till the end. And even then, what does he want? He doesn't want to conquer Earth. He doesn't care about humans. We're beneath him. He already controls a world. He wants the anti-life equation so that he can make the entirety of existence like Apocalypse. But I thought this issue was great. I can't believe it came out in 1998. The design work on the Forever People and Infinity Man and even Superman, it's all nostalgic.
Yeah.
I mean, Byrne does very little to update it, and it's great because I I said I may not like Byrne on Superman, but when he's doing Kirby stuff, whether it's in the Fantastic Four or here, he's very reverent. And he really said, I want to make sure that these kids, for lack of a better term, know about this. Now, I was not picking this up at the time. I would not have been interested in getting Superman title, and certainly the Fourth World wasn't on my radar. I had 1998. I was only concerned with one thing, and that was the X-Men.
So let me ask you, 1998, right? Jack Kirby's Fourth World or Cyberforce? I know Jesse's getting Cyberforce. I don't have to ask Jesse.
That's
I know
right.
Jesse's looking for Impact.
That's right.
But which would you get? These are the only two books. Would you have gotten Cyberforce?
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, I would say in 1998, there's a very good chance that the top of my pile was probably Thunderbolts. And then immediately under that was the Darkness from Top Cow, without a doubt. Even after Garth Ennis left that book, I was obsessed with that title. Without a doubt, I would have picked up Cyberforce just because it was coming from Top Cow. Not a doubt in my mind.
All right.
Love
well,
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
But again, Kirby's, you said it before very well. Kirby didn't write down to anyone, right? In the 70s, he wasn't writing down to you. And even in the 90s, the stuff that he tried to get off his chest as an older man, he was still trying to make it relevant. And when you come to this and you have a better understanding of the context that he's writing in, then it's great. Then it makes sense, and you see why it had so much energy behind it. And again, why people are still trying to mine it. We just wrapped up the DC Extended Universe. The big bads there were Darkseid, Steppenwolf, the Mother Box. These are all concepts that Kirby created when he was working at DC for just a few years.
Well, you got to think about that too. Think about Darkseid. Is there a DC villain before Darkseid? A DC villain? Because in Marvel Universe, Doctor Doom's a Marvel villain like 15 seconds after he shows up.
Yeah.
Like he's in Fantastic Four, then he's in Spider-Man, then he's in Hulk. But before that, there's nobody who does that for DC really, right? For the most part.
Jack Kirby created the Red Skull, Magneto, Loki, Doctor Doom, Galactus, Darkseid, and those are that's just the Kang the Conqueror, the High Evolutionary. These are the characters just off the top of my head, and that's just top shelf. That's just special occasions. You keep going down, and you'll hit all the other ones as well. Ko may have had very few strikes, but Kirby made them all. He just did. To Dean's point, it's Darkseid, Doom, just bam, 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 bam. Even Thanos, Jem Starlin has said repeatedly, he is based on the New Gods. Thanos is he's just, Starlin was reading the New Gods and he was like, this is amazing. This is exactly what I want to do, but I don't work for that company. I work for Marvel. Well, I'm gonna steal them. I'm gonna steal them back. I'm gonna bring them back home to the house.
Isn't that weird how cyclical that is? Kirby goes over there to create the New Gods because they want more. They want to bring the Marvel feel over, and then people are like, we should bring that back over. Jim Starlin's like, I can do that here still. Yeah, and it does a great job. Thanos is one of my favorite.
Oh, amazing job! Yeah,
too. And he quickly becomes something different than Darkseid. But yeah, you can feel where that comes from. And let's also pay respect to Thanoside from the Amalgam universe. What a great idea! Really, a great visual and a great idea. You know?
Can I say I was so unfamiliar with these characters that when I bought every Amalgam issue, I thought this is the greatest thing of all time. I had no idea who Thor was squished with. I had no idea who Darkseid or Orion or any of those characters were. I was so confused. I was like, I don't know the DC half of this. And it wasn't until I got my hands on some of the trading cards where I realized, these are those old Fourth World characters. But I had no idea because they weren't around. Darkseid would pop up every once in a while as this generic big bad, but very few people other than Jack and later Grant Morrison ever did anything interesting with him. Paul Levitz did something in Legion, but Darkseid is a very specific type of evil. You got to understand, he's Hitler,
and Tim too.
Oh yeah, of course, right.
In the DCAU, he's the big bad guy ultimately and everything. That's what I'm saying. You could make a strong argument, very very strong argument that there's no DC universe until Jack Kirby does the Fourth World. But listen, they all knew each other, but nothing really seemed to connect or impact anything else for the most part. And Darkseid grows into being that villain for that universe, and to the point where that's all you really have to say, and it's a big event, a big deal. I don't know. They didn't really have anything like that before, in my opinion. It'd be interesting if somebody wants to talk about it. I'm not really taking a stance, but you could make that argument.
No, but you're right, because the history of DC and National before it was very much about the little kingdoms, right?
Fiefdoms, yeah.
Yeah. The Superman office was the Superman office, and the DC office was the DC office.
The
And that was
Batman
one of the,
office. Yeah.
Exactly. And that was one of the reasons that Marvel was able to make such headway, because, again, I'm not saying that Stan was responsible for all the great successes in the 60s, but what he was the guy in charge. So he could make sure that everyone spoke to each other. Jack could create 100 ideas in a month, but Stan was the one saying, okay, I got 3 geniuses in front of me, right? I got Ditko doing this. I got Romita over here. I got Kirby over here. I'm going to make sure these guys all talk to each other so that we can build off our own successes. That was Stan.
Yeah, I think Stan Lee was a really good editor and a good steward, and more importantly, an incredible guy who wanted to be famous. And when comic books made him where he could be, he jumped on it. And I'm not even blaming him. At a time when the industry probably needed a face, and a face that could talk to young people, that pitter patter, that Stan Lee charm, the way he did it, that's what had to happen. He did not create the Avengers. That just didn't happen. But what he did do was put out a soapbox and put out his bulletins and make it feel like you were in this club. I've compared it a lot to ECW in the 90s. And at the start, when Marvel first starts, they don't have a lot of money. They don't have a lot going on for them. They're cut down to 8 titles a month because of the deal they have to make. Martin Goodman's making a slew of cash publishing men's sweat magazines and semi-pornographic skin mags. And God bless him for it. I'm not knocking him for it like a lot of people do. That's, hey, whatever. But he could shut this comics division down. It wouldn't hurt him. It wouldn't hurt him. It's a pimple on his ass. So, but what they do have is this ability between Stan and Steve's ideas, and later John Romita and Don Heck, honestly, did a lot of great work, and we gloss over him a lot, but Don Heck did some really good work then too. What he has the ability to springboard off that, make a face, and make people, oh, did you buy Spider-Man? You're the coolest on your block, aren't you? Look at you. And I think some people knock his scripting. I don't think his scripting's that bad. I think that some of it hasn't aged well, some of it's aged extraordinarily well. But if I read the Stan Lee scripted comic from 1964 versus, say, Green Lantern from the same time, it's going to seem light years ahead of where it is. They're going to be in the same time. It's like when I was doing a blog for Longbox Graveyard for my friend Paul O'Connor. Great guy. Go check out the blog if you get a chance. He's not really updating it regularly anymore, but lots of great stuff going on over there. I did one on Shazam #1 from 1973, 72, one year or the other. And I was like, oh, to make this cool, I'm going to put on music from this time while I read it. What was the #1 album? It was Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. It didn't go together at all. It was like eating a banana and shark's tail. Why would you do this? Like, come on, like, what the hell is wrong with you? It didn't make sense because it was too kiddie. It did not speak to it. But you can kind of listen to the Beatles and read Captain America or Avengers comic from 64, Fantastic Four, and it would feel kind of contemporary. They would feel very similar, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I don't want anybody to think I don't think Stan Lee did anything. I think he was very important for the process. I just don't think he created Kang the Conqueror.
All right. Darry, did you have any other notes there, man, about what's going on in this issue?
I like Jimmy Olsen. One of the things I always say about one of the reasons I didn't like the DCEU is Zack Snyder had Jimmy Olsen murdered in a deleted scene in Man of Steel and never bothered acknowledging that in the rest of the 10 years of the messed up mistake that was that whole thing. I didn't like Jimmy Olsen originally. I never liked sidekicks, but Kirby was the one who sold me on it. There's a story, again, I have no firsthand source, that when Kirby came to DC, they said, well, listen, you bring your new ideas, but we do want you working on a book that we already have. We'd like to get a little bump. And he supposedly said, what doesn't have an ongoing title? Who am I not taking food out of their kid's mouth? And I'm like, well, Jimmy Olsen's on the cancellation block. You can take him and you can try out Superman at the same time. And he's like, yeah, great. And he immediately hits the ground running. And I mentioned before the Newsboy Legion, but he brings them in. And Kirby was very good at writing kids, not necessarily sidekicks, but kids. He could write very well because he was in a kid gang. So I love the inclusion of Jimmy here. He's only in a few panels, but Grant Morrison would play this to great effect in All-Star Superman, where Jimmy just has these wild, crazy, insane adventures that are up there with anything anything Superman does, but he has them on the other side of the page, so to speak. So I was very happy to see him here. I love that he's a grounding force for Superman. The other thing I wanted to mention is there's a random page when Superman first sees Supertown, which, again, I don't know if we described this, but Supertown is an artificial version, basically, of the island of Manhattan that floats above New Genesis, because New Genesis doesn't really have any inhabitants anymore. It was destroyed in the Great War with Darkseid, and there are some inhabitants. They're their own characters, but that's what Supertown is. There's a lot more. New Gods ran for a while, but the idea is that Supertown is the beautiful golden realm that floats above the planet of New Genesis. So that's really what it is. But I love in this issue that when he first sees it, Byrne gives him 2/3 of a page, and it's this really early computer generated artwork. And the reason I like that is that Kirby always played with formats. One of the things he's most well known for is he used to do these random collages where he would cut up magazines and pulp covers and whatever else, and he would stick them in there, and everyone would be like, "What are you doing?" He's like, I want to do this. I want to show the reader how weird this is. And by having my drawn characters observe pictures from our world, I'm conveying that to them. And Byrne does something similar. A collage wouldn't have made that much sense, but he does break out the computer generated image. Is it a great image? No, but I'm looking at it in 2023. I still like that he did that. And I like that he tried to show something new. Like, Supertown isn't just advanced. It's beyond what Superman could imagine. Because at this point early in his career, he hasn't had many of the great adventures. He certainly has not been to Krypton. And I thought that was a really good thing. I think it helps understand that Byrne knew what he was talking about when he did this book. This was not just an assignment. This was a labor of love. And you can see that with all the scenes with Highfather. Again, very often is Superman not portrayed as the smartest guy in the room. And you just have to look at the pages with Highfather to see what this is. It's that father-son relationship. It's that teacher, that sensei-student relationship where Highfather's shown sitting down and he's talking to him and he already knows the answer to everything, but he's letting Superman get there on his own. And again, just stories that weren't being told with the character, and I really appreciate it because, again, it got me into the head of Superman, a character who at this point would have been 70-something years old, and it's just like, this is good. You showed me something new with something old.
Yeah. I love how when he does, speaking of Supertown, when he gets there, Superman is immediately just way out of his element. He's used to being on high alert to try and save people, and there's that one instance where he sees what looks to be a building about to fall onto this lady, and he runs over there to stop it, and she's like, "What are you doing?" "I'm practicing." He's so out of his element and doesn't know what's going on. It's kind of great to see Superman trying to just understand what it's like to live in a world or be in a world where he doesn't have to worry about saving people 24/7. It's
maybe just 15.
Yeah. That's right.
There's some saving to be done there because experiments will go wrong and things like that.
But it's interesting too because it asks this very fundamental question of, you're Superman, you get to be here, you get to have all of your powers. There's a yellow sun up there. You get to have all of your powers, but this is not a world where people live separated. This is not a world where you're going to have to constantly save them from both themselves and extraterrestrial threats. We're at a cold war with hell. Hell is on the other side of the star. We know it's coming one day. We'll deal with it at the time. But this is a perfect world. There are no civilians here. You can choose to do whatever you do, and he's never been put into that position before because it's what do you want to do on a world where you have all of your powers, but you don't have to necessarily dedicate every waking hour to the benefit of your fellow man. If you want to do that, great, congratulations, but you don't have to. You can choose to do something else because everyone here can take care of themselves.
Exactly.
And I think that's
you do have to worry about Galactus showing up.
You do. Again, listen, you're going to end up punching Darkseid, or you're going to end up getting a fight with someone, or you're going to end up dealing with the Devil Lance. I'm not saying that there aren't adventure stories, but fundamentally, when he's on Earth, he's like, I can hear everyone screaming and crying, and there's pain, and there's devastation, there's inequality, and I have to be an example to these people. On Supertown, everyone's like, no, we have our examples. We know the god of fighting. We know the god of the hearth. Right. We know them. They're our neighbors. We're good. You choose what you want to do. That's why it's so good when he sends them back to Earth, because your point of there was no DC universe before Darkseid shows up, you're right, because what does Highfather tell him? It's like, well, you are fighting the good fight. You are using your powers to help your fellow man. You are the opposite of Darkseid. That's probably why he likes your little planet so much, because there's so many of you doing that, and that's anathema to him. Darkseid can't imagine using great strength to the benefit of anyone other than Darkseid. So it's a great scene with Highfather, because he's basically saying, yeah, this is heaven, but it ain't your time yet. And unfortunately, you're going to have to fight this battle that I inadvertently created on my behalf. You might win, and that would be great, but you got to fight it. And you put this character from 1938 into a position he hasn't been in before, and you send him off. If you asked anyone what are Superman's greatest villains, they're going to name Darkseid, a guy who was created decades later to fight a bunch of different characters. But they're going to name Darkseid.
No, what I was going to say is, on New Genesis, everybody is in Supertown. Everybody doesn't need to be saved or whatever. But what you do have is you have Metron, who's going to invent an inversion ray. And he might be like, listen, could be dangerous. I'll need some people around to gather debris or whatever. That's the adventures in a perfect world in Supertown. It's more things might be dangerous, but it's because we're trying to explore and establish new technologies, new paradigms to challenge the unknown, to reference another Kirby book. It would not be because, oh man, somebody's got to save me from Lex Luthor. It would not work that way. Either Galactus and Darkseid are showing up, or Light Ray accidentally was flirting too hard and caught something on fire, and we need to go put it out.
I do want to speak on how powerful the graphic arts are and Infinity Man is.
Yeah.
Because you get a great glimpse of how overpowered Superman is, and Infinity Man is just like, hey, what's up? And he's just tossing these guys out there. It's a great example of how powerful these guys are. But go ahead, Dean.
No, I was going to say it's because the Infinity Man can ignore the rules of the universe and physics. He's beyond it.
Oh.
He's the infinite. So these grab guards are increasing their gravity as they're holding Superman down. So the fact that Superman isn't already dead, or at least plunged halfway into the Earth's core, so when he shows up, he's like, gravity doesn't exist anymore, guys. What are you going to do?
As soon as he comes in there, him rescuing Superman is a great kind of way of introducing you to how powerful these guys are. Dean, I'll go ahead and let you go. I don't have anything else I really wanted to bring up here. What are your thoughts on this issue, man?
Well, first off, it's different than the original, because in the original, Superman doesn't go to Supertown. He actually flies most of the way there into the boom tube, and he's like, I got to go back. I can't go there now. He makes a decision without speaking to Highfather, and that's a really interesting and neat change.
Wow.
It ends up the same. I don't know which I like better. They're both really good but different. I really do like the conversation with Highfather here. But also, I get why in that book they wanted Superman to make the call for himself. So I thought that it was neat that he wasn't afraid to update something that might work a little better in a certain, let's get these other characters in here. I do think it sucked that they went to Supertown and didn't see more of some of the other new gods like Fastback or Light Ray or Lonar or the guy from Madison Square Garden with the knife in his hand from the Carnage concert. You know he's a new god. Now, he may actually be on Apocalypse, but you know he's been a Supertown. And he can be there anytime he wanted. He's always ready to go. That's his new god ability. He's like heavy metal, the Slayer. So that's another thing to keep in mind about that. All in all, it's really a great update and retelling of a story that, because of the lack of coverage of the Forever people, their lack of presence, I think it was very timely, because you didn't really get to see them a lot. And I'm a huge Forever People fan. I know there aren't a lot of huge Forever People fans, but I'm one of them. So anytime I get to see them show up, it's great. And it's one issue. It's fun. It's one of those things that you don't really see so much anymore with decompression. There's a lot in this one issue. There's a beginning, a middle, an end. It all wraps up pretty nicely. And at the end, you get to see New God Orion, who started off New Gods #1, which is pretty much, that scene is pretty much almost exactly from it. And so I know what comes next, and it just makes me feel joyous in a way I can't explain. But there's not very much you can want out of a New Gods comic that you don't get out of this one. Maybe a few more of the guys showing up, but this is a Forever People-centric comic, and it works. And I haven't read the rest of this. I've read a few scattershot issues, but I'll have to go back and try it, and because I really like this issue, give it a shot and see if maybe John Byrne does My New Gods right. Probably not, but that's not his fault, because nobody really does except Kirby. That would probably be my only legitimate complaint, is he does so much with the art to make it feel of that time. And he does so much with the collage thing and everything, but he doesn't try and write Kirby dialogue at all. And some people do not like Kirby's dialogue. I love Kirby's dialogue. And once you figure out that he dialogues the way he draws, it all comes together and makes sense.
Oh, yeah?
I think so.
All right. Byrne
It's very
leaving.
bombastic. It's very in your face. Like Superman says something like, I'm here for peace, and that's the seed you better dig quick. You understand? And you're like, okay, that's kind of corny on an extent, but it's in your face. It's to the point. Not a lot else going on. And I wish he didn't even related that a little more to really put it over the edge and give it that Kirby feel.
I was just taking a look to see what John Byrne was going to do after this. And you already mentioned it, and that is...
Yeah, he goes back to Marvel, right? He does the Spider-Man books and Spider-Man Chapter 1, and doesn't he do like that 50s Avengers story? I can't remember. Takes place in the 50s. Marvel's Lost Generation.
I do not see it.
I don't remember if that was him. I know Roger Stern wrote that.
It might not have been him then.
You might be right. That definitely feels like something he was involved in.
Right. That feels very Byrne.
Yeah.
But no, Byrne would return to Marvel, and so right now...
Yeah, he did it. I looked it up on the interwebs. Don't fool me. He did Marvel The Lost Generation. Don't try and pull one over on me ever again, Darry.
I
I'll throw your ass in the boob tube.
When did that come out?
2000.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
A little later.
No, first
I'm really mad. I am going to throw Darry in the boob tube. It's going to be out of love, not hate. And that's the other thing I wanted to point out about this is Highfather ultimately, I was going to say this a second ago, when it comes to this stuff, I think this is true on our world as well. It's kind of like the Smiths song Ask. The lyrics of the song are, if it's not love, then it's the bomb that will bring us together. And that's what's going to happen in New Genesis and Apocalypse. If they can't figure out a way to get past things, which they won't, the only thing that will bring them together is utter destruction of both and the dawn of the fifth world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which Darry will be in charge of. That's why I'm throwing him through the boom tube. He will be the Highfather of the fifth world. He'll be the fast bag.
All right, I'll take it. Whatever that is.
Run fast.
Okay.
I think Jesse is the light ray. I
can see Jesse as light ray.
Yeah, he's always got a smile on his face. He doesn't talk bad about anything. You and I badmouth everyone, and Jesse's always just like, no, you know what? They probably got a mother and a father, and they're proud of them. So
Doubt it.
Jesse's the modern light ray. He's nothing but he's a giver, and I love that about him.
I'll take that.
Okay, so which new god are you then?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't know. That's a good question.
You said I was Highfather, and I'm just going to run with it because that's an incredible phrase.
I did when I was reading this issue. I heard your voice because he was just talking about it's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. You're going to figure this stuff out. That had a very you feel to it. I will say that before Zack Snyder got his filthy paws on him, I always liked Steppenwolf over on Apocalypse side because he's the general of the armies,
right?
And he's a great design, just great design.
He does look really cool. I wouldn't want to be him though, because he's sort of a fascist.
No. He's absolutely 100%.
Do you want to be Vilbin Vundamar? Would that be better for you? Jesse, do you know who that is?
No, it sounds German though. Tell me.
Yeah, he is an evil new god who's like, boy, those Prussians sure were cool. I'm going to be like them.
Yeah, it's almost as if Kirby fought in the European theater for...
Right. It's almost as if he was a Jewish guy who hated Nazis.
Yeah, but I always liked Steppenwolf because he had a great design and he was Darkseid's uncle. So he'd always be like, hey, are we going to conquer New Genesis today? And Darkseid would be like, no, I'm looking for the anti-life equation. And Steppenwolf would just be like, oh, okay, cool. I don't think that's a real thing. Can I just go? Can I just do this? Because I really, really want to do this.
Right.
He's like, no, you can't. And he would always be plotting. He'd always be like some weird Hamlet stuff. And I always liked him. But Dean's right. He is absolutely 100% a fascist, even before he was in that terrible movie. So
I did look up just to see how long the Orion series went with Walt Simonson, and that looks like it went a good while too, 25 issues.
Yeah, solid 2-year run, I want to say.
Good comic. That one I've read. Yeah, no, that's a good comic.
I have not read it. I've read the first 3 issues and then haven't read the rest.
But it's important to remember, I mentioned this before, but John Byrne really got Fantastic Four. Most people would say Fantastic Four ends when Kirby and Lee are done with the book. And certainly all the big concepts have been introduced. But John Byrne wrote a very good run. He was on it for a while.
Agreed.
And he did the same thing with the writing and the penciling, and he was really good. And he was coming off his X-Men success when he did that. Walt Simonson's another one where if you put a gun to someone's head and said, what are the best Thor runs? They'd say Kirby, and then they would say Walt Simonson, and they would be right. Simonson's run on. Oh my God, with the shirtless whatchamacallit? Yeah, that is
World Engine.
The World Yeah, but it's only 4 issues long.
Right,
So Simonson coming on to write. My whole point was that Simonson coming on to write Orion is one of the most natural fits. It's just
for sure.
It works. It's just you start reading it and you're like, oh, this is exactly what this should have always been. Again, I don't think Simonson and Kirby like sat next to each other and Kirby was like, oh, this is what you should do. But Simonson just gets him. So that Orion book is phenomenal. That's probably the first Fourth World book I ever read.
Think about Simonson too, though. What does he do very well? Dinosaurs and the Norse gods. And if there's any, he understands the big concept, the big myth, the big all-encompassing monster that will one day devour everything. So of course he gets the fourth world.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Jesse, as somebody who hasn't done a lot of the fourth world stuff, do you get that they're more than superheroes?
Do I get? Yeah.
People are like, because when they get misused, they just wind up people who punch people.
Oh.
Like in Panic in the Sky, they were kind of just superheroes. And remember, when we did that, I was like, they don't show them quite as well as they should. Mm-hmm. But this is what I was talking about. They should be shown more in this vein. They're much more than superheroes. Listen, if they catch somebody robbing a bank, yeah, they'll stop them, but whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm here trying to defend the entire concept of sentient freedom in the universe. Fine, I will stop your little boat terrorist.
Right. Yeah. I think
but a lot of that came across to you, not having dived into this lore prior.
Well, yeah, and you're right. I think a lot of this, as personally, I don't avoid the cosmic stuff. I've never jumped headlong into it. So stuff like the Fourth World and these cosmic
not entities, even like Infinity Gauntlet.
I've read Infinity Gauntlet. Adam Warlock and Starlin is probably some of the most cosmic that I've probably sat there and read. But if you throw Silver Surfer at me, I'm like, okay, well, I know a little bit about this guy. I am absolutely the street level guy that just reads Punisher, Spider-Man. So concepts like this. Cyberforce. You mentioned, and the other thing that you kind of how this is so it would have been completely decompressed into many issues at some point because of how much is actually being said here and stuff that Kirby just, hey, this is the concept, I'm running with it. I think that intimidates me sometimes because it's one of those things where it's, gosh, what am I missing here? There's got to be something I'm missing here. Or maybe it's one of those things where I'm just like, I want an answer to that, but I'm not going to get it because I don't have the time to give you the answer to that. Sorry, we got to go to the next story. And I'm not saying that as a detriment. I'm just saying
that is a fair criticism of Kirby, an incredibly fair one, that sometimes he didn't flesh things out and would drop things before they were ready. It's easy to forget, but in Fantastic Four number 50, they're done with Galactus on page 8, and then the Human Torch goes to college. That's the last half of it. Yeah. You're 100% correct. Kirby's done with something. It's done, and let's go on. You're like, but wait, that felt abrupt. It's
right. Right.
So 100% that's a fair criticism of Kirby. I just want to say that because there's a lot of people who have accused me. I say a lot of people. 5 people I know have accused me of not being able to criticize Kirby because he's the greatest of all time. I'm like, no, there are things you can say about him. And that's one of them. Sometimes things they fall off a cliff. You're very interested. You're like, wait, sometimes that's not his fault. That was the nature of periodical comic books at the time. Business. But sometimes it is just, oops, messed that up. Guess the Human Torch is going to major in biology.
But talking to you guys, I can see, and I've obviously seen this in the past as well, but he's way ahead of his time on a lot of this stuff. Way ahead of his time.
Right.
Never read it. So.
Oh, my God. OMAC, I read for the first time only a couple of years ago. If that had come out today, it would be, everyone would be like, yeah, this is absolutely our current day. He made a comic. Similar. He updated. So he very quickly, when he was at DC, he had a ton of ideas. Dean's right. The original plan was for him to give this stuff off to an editor, get full credit, have his own pocket of the universe, and continue and just do what not sit at the drawing board all day, but come up with the big ideas. And one of the things was OMAC. And OMAC was an update of Captain America, where it's a little nebbish kid and something happens and he turns into this big guy and the big guy fights and he fights better than anyone else. But the kid is like an office worker. He's like an office drone. And OMAC isn't Cap because there's really no central government anymore. He's this big bruiser that is run by a satellite and a computer network. And this is the 70s. Kirby is just describing things that were going to happen to us, and he could just look around and say, "Oh yeah, this is where we're going." No questions asked. I've lived through the Great Depression.
There's a story about a corporation that takes all the water in the world.
There's a story about a bunch of wealthy people renting a city for a night. There's people in boxes. There's one issue that really freaked me out, where the only sanctified stress relief is you go into a room and your bad dreams are projected onto the wall and you're given a sledgehammer and you're just allowed to break them down. This was a superhero.
Wow.
OMAC is another one of those concepts where no one but John Byrne ever tried to do the original because it was too weird. You wouldn't have believed, would not have believed that this thing came out in the early 70s. OMAC, man, it becomes more relevant as time goes on.
If you had time to do another podcast, Jesse, I would say we should do DC 70s Kirby, because you got to learn, son. You got to learn.
I do. I will gleefully say that I am woefully ignorant on some of the stuff that he's done, especially in the 70s, man. I wish I did have the time. I would love it. That's so if we get a chance, we ought to definitely put something else on the agenda if we can. It relates to it. I don't know as far as 90s goes.
Phantom Force, right? That was the image.
Yep.
We did Secret City, I think.
Secret City Saga was based on his concepts. But we could always jump over to our sister podcast.
That's right.
Source material, we can do something there. But we're getting a little off. But yeah, OMAC is just wild. And nobody else did it very well until Dan Didio did it. And they just completely just used the name and reinvented the concept, which was honestly the best thing to do, because nobody was ever going to approach that. Ain't nobody going to paint the Mona Lisa again. Ain't nobody going to do OMAC very well again.
Yeah. Though I will say, both the Image guys and before them, Eastman and Laird, when they created the Ninja Turtles, every once in a while you do get someone who understood not what Kirby did, but what he was trying to do. Yes. And that's always creates something new.
Yep.
And if you have the ability, own it. Because Kirby Dean was talking about criticisms. I will say Kirby was the worst businessman in an industry made up of nothing but terrible businessmen. He really was.
He did not take care of himself the way until he started letting his wife get more involved in the process.
Roz kept that man alive. Yeah, no. Simon first and then Roz.
80s, he's cutting pretty good deals, but it's because she's doing all that work. Because anybody can ask him anything and he'd just say yes, because what was it? It was a chance for him to sit down, put a pencil on some paper, and create something new, and that's what he wanted to do.
The Image guys, the founders, and Eastman and Laird, and I'm sure there are dozens of others, but they looked at this and they said, well, Jack would always say when you talk to him in interviews, and he talked to everyone. He was not Titko. He talked to literally everyone. He would always say the same thing. He's like, I don't want you to make the best Captain America story. I want you to make your Captain America. Captain America was me and Simon looking at the rest of the world saying, we have to do something. And we came up with him, and we made sure he sold so that enough people would get the story. What story is in you that has to come out, and can you get it there? And Eastman and Laird always cite him as an influence, not only for creating the Ninja Turtles, which again seemed like a dumb idea at the time, but is one of the most successful things the medium's ever come up with, but retaining the intellectual property and saying it's very important to us we not end up like the King. We can't be beholden to a bunch of people who don't understand why we care so much about this. So it is funny in a sad way to see that people understood his story and continued it in a different way. And the Image founders were the same way. They're like, well, we're at the height of our success. We're not going to keep throwing ideas away just because we're afraid. We have to take this risk and see where it gets us. Some of them did very well. Some of them did not. But they've said this. They were looking at Kirby and they were like, what are we going to do now that we know how his story came to an end? So it's interesting.
At the start of Image too, they did the 2 issues of Phantom Force, which made the Kirby family 6 figures of money when they really needed towards the end of Jack's life. And Rob Liefeld apparently went over there with his first Youngblood money and spent close to, this is hearsay of hearsay, but close to $1 million on original art.
Yeah, just buying pages. Buying pages. You have that one? Do you have this?
And they would say, we want X. He's like, I'm going to give you X plus YZ. Yeah. And which is odd. Normally, you're buying something, you're never like, I'd like to pay more for this. But they knew their stuff. And honestly, this is sacrilegious to some people, but Rob Liefeld's the guy who gets Kirby the best in a lot of ways. Yeah. His pages are full of energy. They always look like something's happening. People are moving. And he is just, even though he does copy some concepts and stuff with Smash, he's always like, you got to do the new new thing. What's new? Yeah. What's new? What's big? He liked the big story. He liked the new concept, the new character. I respect Rob a lot for that. And in many ways, I see him as one of the true carriers of Kirby's legacy in a way that I think a lot of people don't want to for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, we talked about it when we did the cable miniseries, but Liefeld is used to constantly create new concepts, good, bad, or otherwise. New. I want a piece of that action. I want to give you something new. And that's a very Kirby trait. Like how many members of the Mutant Liberation Front or X-Force or Youngblood or the Six Pack, he kept making new things. They weren't always hits. I'm not comparing the Six Pack to the Fantastic Four, the Royal House of the Inhumans here. But again, making new things is very important. A lot of people are terrified of that, or they just can't figure out how to do it in the first place. I'm not a creator, so what the hell do I know? But yeah, to Dean's point, Liefeld never shied away from that stuff.
Also, Kirby would tell you this too. It's about sales. And at the end of the day, Kirby knew it was about selling books. And people were like, why would Rob Liefeld put out Youngblood and Team Youngblood and Brigade and a Supreme series and a Battlestar miniseries? Because all of them were selling 600,000 copies. Right. You got to get the sales where they're at, because they ain't going to be there. Because Kirby had seen the industry go up and down and then up and then back down, and he would see it go down and back up again. But he was there every time the industry almost died. So when you talk to him too, especially talking with the Image guys, he's like, they're getting sales. What's your problem? Yep. If people are willing to buy like 6 books from Liefeld, well, God bless them. Then they're willing to buy it.
100% true. Dean's absolutely right. He created the romance comic because it was like, okay, they took superheroes are dead, and he never really liked horror, but that was dead too. What's left? Well,
westerns and romance. Westerns. I don't really want to
read these things. Yeah, it's just as simple as that. What are they into? Can I tell a good story? Oh, I can tell a good story. Well, let's do that. Westerns are coming back. Here you go. Here's Boys Ranch. Still one of the best things he's ever made. I mean, It's Dean's absolutely right. He followed the market. He wasn't dumb. He wasn't, again, I hate to compare the two, but he wasn't Ditko sitting in a corner only drawing what was really interesting to him. He was looking at the market and saying, no, what do you want? What do the most amount of people, what are they going to be interested in? And that's what he would deliver. Look at the Fantastic Four. It's of the moment. It's of the space race. It's of young people. It's of embracing the future. It's all of these things that were popular in the 60s. That's why that book was phenomenal. And it's why so many people have had trouble, reduplicating it. Because I'm sure Kirby would be like, well, stop trying to do Fantastic Four. It's something I did when I was younger than you are now. Do something new. Do your own version of Doom Patrol. Do your own version of X-Men.
What's the space race now? What's going on now?
Exactly.
Like, what is captivating the world now? You should do something based that comes out of that and use that as a springboard and see where you get to. Yeah. You probably get to Jesse's house.
Center of the universe over here. Specifically in my basement.
Thing.
Oh my God! Yes, the nexus of all realities. Yes, is right in Jesse's backyard.
Right behind the Punisher.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. Headcanon accepted.
Perfect. Guys, we did it. We talked about the Fourth World. We talked about Jack Kirby. We talked about John Byrne. This has been a absolute pleasure. Let's go ahead. We'll go ahead and get into plugs here. Dean Compton, tell us about the Unspoken Decade.
Yeah, we're at the unspokendecade.com. A lot of great new articles up there. And we're very active on our Facebook group. Just search for Unspoken Decade there, and that's where you'll find us. Still plugging away a little bit on Blue Sky, and then maybe one day I'll post something on Instagram again. We're there, but I just don't do anything. I'm very lazy. But we're very active on Facebook, and we're very active at the page. So check us out there.
Yeah, we got a lot of people interested into the Unspoken Decade Facebook page here lately. That is for sure. So that's great to see. Love to see that. The 90s, folks. Hey, what a great time to be alive back then and talk about some fantastic comics. That's what we're doing right here on the Unspoken Issues podcast. You can go back into the archive. I think this one is going to probably be airing in a couple weeks from when we're recording this. But yeah, we had the whole holiday season. We celebrated it right here on the Unspoken Issues podcast, where we talked about, first up was me. It was Chris Armstrong. It was Evan Bevins talking about poor old Rick and his digestive issues in Sleepwalker Holiday Special. That's right. Poor old Rick.
I remember that.
Had a bad bout of indigestion and made things a little bit difficult for the old Sleepwalker there. That was a fun holiday-themed issue, I guess. There was some holiday reference. Somebody got stabbed with a Christmas tree. That happened in that. So there you go. Then we had the Marvel Holiday Special, 1996. a lot of great stories. And man, was that a fun discussion that happened on that podcast. It was me, Dean, and Darry talking about some Silver Surfer and the Star of Bethlehem and how he just doesn't understand children. It was great discussion there. And then, of course, the Batman Adventures holiday special where, I learned a lot about BTAS, folks. BTAS. That's right. I learned about the BTAS. So yeah, you can absolutely go back into the archive and listen to all 3 of those episodes. And I'm probably going to have a nice little 4th episode just to kind of cap things off where we're talking about just anything and everything that kind of got cut out of some of those other episodes. It's a lot of fun. And Not All Robots will be airing. It'll be me and Mark Radulich talking about Mark Russell's Not All Robots. That should be happening there at the beginning of the year. So that's a lot of fun. The AIs are coming. Get ready. That over there is Dean Compton. Down there is Darry Waite. I am Jesse Starcher. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us. Unspoken Issues is part of the UnspokenDecade.com, the home for 90s comics, blogs, and podcasts. Unspoken Issues also has a Facebook group you can join if you are interested. Just search the Unspoken Issues podcast and request to join. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com and the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.